Right now, as tourists flood the Las Vegas Strip spending billions on hotels, shows, and overpriced cocktails, they're walking past something extraordinary that most of them will never notice: the largest collection of failed mega projects in American history. We're not talking about small businesses that went under. We're talking about skyscrapers that were built but never opened, hotel towers that stand empty for decades, massive construction sites that have been abandoned for so long that weeds grow through the concrete, hidden in plain sight, scattered along and around the most famous street in Las Vegas, is a ghost town worth over $10 billion. $10 billion of dreams turned into nightmares, of grand visions reduced to empty lots and half-finished monuments to financial catastrophe. This is the story of 3 projects that were supposed to redefine Las Vegas forever, and instead became the most expensive failures in the city's history. You think you know Las Vegas? You haven't seen anything yet. To understand how Las Vegas created a $10 billion ghost town, you need to understand the psychology of the people who build casinos. These aren't normal business people. Normal business people build strip malls and apartment complexes. Casino developers build monuments to their own egos, and they call it vision. In Las Vegas, bigger has always been better. When the MGM Grand opened in 1993, it wasn't just a hotel, it was the largest hotel in the world. 5,000 rooms. The message was clear. We don't just want your money. We want to overwhelm you with spectacles so massive that you can't ignore it. This worked for decades because Las Vegas had one crucial advantage. It was the only place in America where you could gamble legally. Visitors had no choice. If you wanted the Vegas experience, you came to Vegas. And when you came to Vegas, you stayed wherever had the biggest, flashiest, most outrageous hotels. But in the 2000s, something changed. Gambling was being legalized in other states. Atlantic City, Indian casinos, riverboat gambling. Suddenly, Las Vegas wasn't the only game in town. The casino industry's response was predictably Vegas. If we're losing our monopoly on gambling, we'll build attractions so incredible, so unprecedented, that people will come to Vegas even if they never touch a slot machine. This was the birth of the destination resort concept. These wouldn't just be casinos, they would be entire world, mixed-use developments with hotels, shopping, dining, entertainment, residential towers, conference centers, small cities within the city. The problem with building small cities is that they cost as much as small cities. We're talking billions of dollars, plural, with a B. And when you're betting billions of dollars on a single project, there's no margin for error. Everything has to go perfectly. The financing has to hold up. The construction has to stay on schedule. The economy has to remain stable. Consumer demand has to stay strong. In Las Vegas, in the 2000s, none of these things happened. Our first stop on the tour of Vegas's ghost town is the most visible monument to failure on the entire strip, the building that spent over a decade as the tallest abandoned skyscraper in America. If you've visited Las Vegas anytime between 2009 and 2023, you've seen it. A massive, sleek tower on the north end of the strip, 67 stories tall, completely dark, no lights in the windows, no signs of life, just a giant concrete and glass tomb piercing the Vegas skyline like a dagger. This is the Fontainebleau, Las Vegas, and it represents the single most expensive development disaster in Nevada history. The story begins in 2005, when Miami developer Jeff Soffer announced plans for a Vegas version of his successful Fontainebleau Miami Beach. This wouldn't just be another casino, it would be a statement. The tallest occupied building in Nevada, 3,600 rooms, 173,000 square feet of casino space. The price tag, $4 billion. $4 billion. To put that in perspective, the entire annual budget of the city of Las Vegas is about $600 million. Soffer was proposing to spend nearly 7 times the city's annual budget on a single building. The groundbreaking ceremony took place in February 2007, with Nevada's governor in attendance, champagne flowing, and promises that the Fontainebleau would redefine luxury hospitality in Las Vegas. For 18 months, everything seemed to be going according to plan. The foundation was poured. The steel frame rose story by story. The tower was topped out, construction industry terminology, for reaching its full height on November 14, 2008. At 737 feet tall, it was indeed the tallest building in Nevada. Then the world changed. September 2008, Lehman Brothers collapsed, triggering the worst financial crisis since the Great Depression. December 2008, the United States officially entered a recession. April 2009, Fontainebleau's banking syndicate, a group of major financial institutions that had agreed to provide construction financing, informed SOFR that they were cutting off all funding to the project. The Fontainebleau was 70% complete. 70%. The exterior was finished. The interior was being fitted out. They were months away from opening, not years. But in the middle of a financial crisis, with credit markets frozen and the Las Vegas tourism industry in freefall, the banks decided they'd rather take their losses than continue pouring money into what increasingly looked like a doomed project. SOFR sued the banks for $3 billion, claiming they had reneged on their financing commitments. The banks countersued, claiming SOFR had misrepresented the project's finances and prospects. While the lawyers fought, construction workers packed up their tools and went home. The Fontainebleau, 70% complete and months from opening, became the most expensive construction site abandoned in American history. In June 2009, Fontainebleau Las Vegas filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection. The building sat empty, and empty, and empty. For over a year, SOFR fought to restart construction, to find new financing, to salvage his $4 billion dream. But in a post-financial crisis world, no bank was willing to throw good money after bad on a Las Vegas mega project. In February 2010, the unfinished Fontainebleau was sold at a bankruptcy auction to Carl Icahn, the legendary corporate raider, for $148 million. $148 million for a building that had cost over $2 billion to construct to that point. Icahn had paid roughly 7 cents on the dollar for what should have been the crown jewel of the Las Vegas Strip. But here's the thing about Carl Icahn. He didn't buy the Fontainebleau because he wanted to finish it. He bought it because he thought he could flip it to someone else who wanted to finish it. For 7 years, the Fontainebleau sat empty under Icahn's ownership. He occasionally floated rumors about restarting construction, about finding partners, about grand reopening plans. But no construction crews ever returned to the site. The tallest building in Nevada sat dark, empty, and useless for 7 years. In 2017, Echelon finally found his buyers, the Witkoff Group and New Valley LLC, who purchased the unfinished tower for $600 million and announced plans to complete it as the Drew Las Vegas. Construction finally restarted in 2018. After 9 years of abandonment, work crews returned to the site. The Drew was scheduled to open in 2022, 14 years after the original project had been halted. Then 2020 happened. In March 2020, as COVID-19 shut down Las Vegas, construction on the Drew stopped once again. This time, the excuse was the pandemic. But the real reason was the same as it had been in 2009: financing. In a world where tourism had collapsed overnight and no one knew when it would recover, investors weren't eager to fund the completion of a 67-story hotel tower. The Drew joined the Fontainebleau on the ever-growing list of names for the same empty building. Finally, in February 2021, Jeff SOFR, the original developer who had lost the project 12 years earlier, bought it back. Working with Koch Industries, he restored the original Fontainebleau name and promised, once again, to complete the project. This time, incredibly, it actually happened. The Fontainebleau Las Vegas finally opened on December 13th, 2023, 16 years after construction began. 14 years after it was supposed to open at a total cost of $3.7 billion. But here's the cruel irony. By the time the Fontainebleau finally opened, Las Vegas had changed. The North Strip, where the building is located, was no longer the prime real estate it had been in 2005. Most tourists never venture that far from the center of the Strip. The property that was supposed to redefine Las Vegas luxury opened into a market that had largely forgotten it existed. If the Fontainebleau represents the most visible failure in Vegas history, our second stop represents the most complete erasure, a project so thoroughly abandoned that most people have forgotten it ever existed. Drive north on Las Vegas Boulevard from the heart of the Strip, past the Sahara, and you'll see something strange. A massive empty lot, not a small vacant parcel, a 63-acre void in the middle of one of the most valuable stretches of real estate in America. This isn't undeveloped land. This is the site of one of the most legendary casinos in Vegas history, demolished to make way for a project so ambitious that its failure left a hole in the Strip that remains unfilled 18 years later. This is where Echelon Place was supposed to rise, and this is where $4.8 billion worth of dreams went to die. To understand the magnitude of this failure, you need to understand what came before. The empty lot where weeds now grow was once home to the Stardust Resort and Casino, one of the most iconic properties in Las Vegas history. The Stardust opened in 1958 and quickly became synonymous with old-school Vegas glamour. This was where the Rat Pack performed, where high roller whales came to play baccarat in private salons, where the biggest stars in entertainment came to see and be seen. The Stardust was also infamous for its connections to organized crime. For decades, it was widely suspected and eventually proven that the casino was being skimmed by the Chicago outfit. The Stardust was the inspiration for the Tangiers Casino in the movie Casino, and its history was the stuff of Vegas legend. But by the 2000s, the Stardust was showing its age. The building dated to the Eisenhower administration. The rooms were small and outdated. The casino floor felt cramped compared to the sprawling mega resorts being built around it. Boyd Gaming, which had owned the Stardust since 1985, faced a choice: spend hundreds of millions renovating a 50-year-old building, or tear it down and start fresh. In January 2006, Boyd Gaming announced it had chosen option 2. The Stardust would be demolished to make way for Echelon Place, a mixed-use development that would dwarf anything else on the Las Vegas Strip. The scale of Echelon Place was breathtaking, 63 acres larger than many shopping malls, 4 hotels providing 5,300 rooms combined, a 140,000 square foot casino, 25 restaurants and bars, the 650,000 square foot Las Vegas Expo Center for conventions and trade shows. The centerpiece would be the Echelon Resort itself, a 3,300 room hotel that would be the largest in Las Vegas. But that was just the beginning. The project would also include a Shangri-La Hotel, the luxury Asian chain's first location in the United States, a Delano Hotel, a Mondrian Hotel, a $500 million shopping promenade. This wasn't just a casino, this was a small city. The total cost, $4.8 billion. $4.8 billion. Even by Las Vegas standards, this was an almost incomprehensible amount of money. Boyd Gaming was betting the company's entire future on a single project. The Stardust closed its doors for the final time on November 1st, 2006, after 48 years of operation. The demolition began immediately. Piece by piece, one of the most famous casinos in Vegas history was reduced to rubble. The groundbreaking ceremony for Echelon Place took place on June 19, 2007, with great fanfare. Nevada politicians praised the project. Gaming industry analysts called it transformational. Boyd Gaming executives promised that Echelon would set a new standard for integrated resorts worldwide. Construction began with massive earth-moving operations. The site was graded and prepared for foundations. Cranes were brought in, steel was ordered, concrete was poured. For 13 months, Echelon Place looked like it might actually become reality. Then, on August 1st, 2008, Boyd Gaming announced that construction was being suspended indefinitely. The official reason was financing. Morgan's Hotel Group, which was supposed to develop the Delano and Mondrian hotels, couldn't secure funding for its portion of the project. General Growth Properties, the mall developer that was supposed to build the shopping promenade, was facing its own financial difficulties. But the real reason was simpler. The Great Recession had begun, and no one wanted to bet $5 billion on a Las Vegas mega project in the middle of an economic collapse. Boyd Gaming had already spent hundreds of millions of dollars on the project. The Stardust was demolished. The site was prepared. Some foundation work had been completed. But rather than push forward, the company made a decision that would define this site for the next 18 years. They walked away. Not temporarily. Not until market conditions improve. They simply stopped. The construction equipment was removed. The building materials were sold off or scrapped. The site was secured with chain link fencing, and there it sat. For months, Boyd Gaming maintained that the suspension was temporary. That construction would resume when financing became available. That Echelon place would still be built. Years passed. The optimistic statements became less frequent. The promises of resumed construction became vaguer. The chain link fencing started to rust. By 2010, it was clear that Echelon Place was never going to be built. Boyd Gaming was struggling financially and couldn't afford to restart such a massive project even if they wanted to. The site where the legendary Stardust once stood and where Echelon Place was supposed to rise became something that had never existed before in Las Vegas. A permanent vacant lot on the Strip. 63 acres of empty land. In the middle of the most expensive real estate in Nevada. For over a decade, various developers and investors approached Boyd Gaming about purchasing the land or partnering on a new development. None of these discussions led anywhere. The economics never made sense. The land was too expensive, the market too uncertain, the scale too massive. Today, 18 years after the Stardust was demolished and 16 years after Echelon construction stopped, most of the site remains empty. Weeds grow through the cracked concrete. Chain link fencing keeps out trespassers. Occasionally, the land is used for parking during major convention. This is what $4.8 billion in abandoned dreams looks like. 63 acres of nothing. In the middle of everything. Our final stop on the tour of Las Vegas's $10 billion ghost town is the most surreal story of all. A building that was actually completed, finished, ready to open, and then demolished because it was too dangerous to occupy. This is the story of the Harmon, and it represents everything that can go wrong when you combine massive egos, unlimited budgets, and inadequate oversight. The Harmon was part of City Center, the $8.5 billion mega development that MGM Resorts and Dubai World built in the heart of the Strip between 2006 and 2009. City Center was supposed to be the ultimate expression of Las Vegas luxury, a collection of hotels, condominiums, shopping, and entertainment venues designed by the world's most famous architects. The main City Center complex included Aria Resort and Casino, the Vidara Hotel, the Bellagio adjacent Crystals Shopping Center, and the Veer Towers residential complex. These buildings opened successfully in December 2009 and remain operational today. But there was supposed to be one more building, the Harmon Hotel and Residences, a 49-story, non-gaming boutique hotel designed by Foster & Partners, the renowned British architectural firm behind London's Gherkin building and Apple's headquarters. The Harmon was conceived as City Center's crown jewel. Not the biggest building, but the most exclusive. 400 ultra-luxury hotel rooms. 207 residential condominiums, a rooftop restaurant and bar with panoramic views of the Strip. The building's design was striking, a sleek glass tower that twisted as it rose, creating different geometric shapes when viewed from different angles. It was architectural eye candy, the kind of building that wins design awards and gets featured in magazines. Construction began in 2007, with Perini Building Company as the general contractor. The Harmon was scheduled to open alongside the rest of City Center in late 2009. Everything seemed to be progressing normally until the spring of 2008, when building inspectors made a discovery that would doom the entire project. The steel reinforcement bars called rebar in the building's concrete structure had been installed incorrectly. This wasn't a cosmetic flaw. This wasn't something that could be fixed with a renovation. This was a fundamental structural defect that compromised the building's ability to withstand earthquakes or high winds. The problem was systematic and extensive. The rebar wasn't just wrong in a few places, it was wrong throughout the building. Fixing it would require tearing out massive amounts of concrete and starting over from the inside out. MGM and Dubai World faced an impossible choice: spend hundreds of millions of dollars essentially rebuilding the interior structure of a half-completed building, or cut their losses and find an alternative solution. They chose option 2. Instead of a 49-story tower, the Harmon would be shortened to 28 stories, the highest point where inspectors determined the structure was safe. The top 21 floors, already under construction, would be removed. This decision created a cascade of new problems. The building had been designed as an integrated whole. The mechanical systems, the elevators, the structural engineering, everything was calibrated for a 49-story building. Cutting off 21 floors meant redesigning all of these systems from scratch. The abbreviated Harmon limped toward completion over the next 2 years. Its truncated form a constant reminder of the construction failures that had necessitated its radical redesign. In 2009, the 28-story Harmon was structurally complete. The exterior was finished. The interior was being fitted out with luxury finishes. But there was one more problem. Even at 28 stories, building inspectors weren't convinced the structure was safe for occupancy. Additional engineering studies were commissioned, computer models were run and rerun, stress tests were performed. The conclusions were devastating. Even the shortened building didn't meet Nevada's seismic safety standards. The structural defects were so extensive that no amount of retrofitting could make the building safe for guests. The Harmon had been completed, but it could never open. MGM and Dubai World now owned a 28-story tower in the middle of the Las Vegas Strip that could never be occupied. Not as a hotel, not as residential condominiums, not as offices, not as anything. It was a $500 million piece of architectural sculpture with no function except to remind everyone who saw it of one of the most expensive construction failures in American history. For 5 years, the Harmon stood empty. Its exterior gleamed. Its windows reflected the lights of the Strip, but inside, it was hollow not because it wasn't finished, but because it was too dangerous to finish. Occasionally, rumors circulated about potential solutions. Maybe the building could be converted to some other use. Maybe new engineering techniques could solve the structural problems. Maybe someone, somewhere, could figure out how to make the Harmon work. None of these solutions materialized. The building's fundamental structural defects were too extensive and too expensive to fix. The Harmon was completed, but it was also doomed. In 2014, MGM made the final inevitable decision: the Harmon would be demolished. The demolition of a 28-story building in the middle of the Las Vegas Strip was a complex logistical undertaking. The building couldn't be imploded, it was too close to other occupied structures. Instead, it had to be taken down floor by floor, piece by piece, in a process that took over a year. The demolition began in early 2014 and was completed in 2015. Where the Harmon once stood, there is now a small park and some additional parking for the rest of the city center complex. The total cost of the Harmon disaster is difficult to calculate precisely, but estimates range from $500 million to over $1 billion. When you factor in the original construction costs, the redesign and truncation expenses, the lost revenue from never opening, and the eventual demolition cost, $1 billion. For a building that was completed but never used, then torn down. 3 projects, 3 different types of failure, 1 staggering total, over $10 billion. The Fontainebleau, $3.7 billion spent on a building that sat empty for 14 years. Echelon Place, $4.8 billion in abandoned dreams, leaving a 63-acre void in the middle of the Strip. The Harmon, up to $1 billion for a building that was completed but never used, then demolished. $10.5 billion. That's more than the GDP of some small countries. It's enough to build hundreds of schools, thousands of housing units, or entire public transit systems. Instead, it built nothing. Or rather, it built monuments to the dangers of unchecked ambition and inadequate oversight in an industry built on taking enormous risks with other people's money. But the financial cost is only part of the story. The real tragedy of Las Vegas's $10 billion ghost town is what these failures represent: the death of the visionary era of casino development. The men who built the original Las Vegas Strip people, like Steve Wynn, who created the Mirage and Bellagio, or Sheldon Adelson, who built the Venetian, were genuine visionaries. They had bold ideas about what Las Vegas could become, and they executed those ideas with skill, creativity, and an understanding of what customers actually wanted. The developers behind the Fontainebleau, Echelon, and the Harmon were not visionaries. They were financial engineers who mistook scale for vision, who thought bigger automatically meant better, who believed that if they built something expensive enough, customers would come simply because they had no choice. They were wrong. Today's Las Vegas is controlled by publicly traded corporations and private equity firms that are far more conservative, far more risk-averse than the entrepreneurs who built the city's golden age. These companies learned the lesson of the $10 billion ghost town. Mega projects are mega risks, and mega risks can destroy even the largest companies. The result is a Las Vegas that builds fewer projects, smaller projects, safer projects. The days of betting the company's entire future on a single visionary development are over. The ghost town next to the Las Vegas Strip cost over $10 billion to create. But it cost something even more valuable. It cost Las Vegas its willingness to dream impossibly big dreams. If you found this investigation into Vegas's hidden failures as shocking as I did, hit that subscribe button. We're uncovering the stories that the casino industry doesn't want you to know, and there are plenty more where this came from.